Have you ever seen that meme where it's a tweet and I can't remember how it goes. It's like there's this girl or this woman that sees another woman and she says like, "Hey, you're looking fabulous," and she responds back by saying like, "Thanks, you too." And the other lady says, "Bitch, I know I do. We're talking about you."
Oh yeah, I've seen that. I kind of find wholesome memes cringe though.
I love it. I'm here for it. Everything wholesome, like I'm hyped. But
speaking of wholesome, I feel like you haven't mentioned my comfy that I'm wearing right now.
I haven't. Because it's like those things that Jenny does, and I just ignore entirely because no. You put the hood up.
I put my hood up, and now I look like a very comfortable Sith Lord. So a comfy, for those of you who don't know what it is, it's basically a Snuggie, only it's a sweatshirt. So instead of being a blanket with armholes, it's a full body thing that goes down to my knees, and on the inside is like woolly fleece. And I'm wearing it now because Lauren likes to keep the apartment at a brisk 45 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's extremely cold, and I have a very frail man body. So I get cold very quickly, especially just sitting down at the office. But here's also another thing. Speaking of Star Wars, I'm on a Star Wars thing right now. I've got my Porg mug. It's shaped like a Porg, and it's huge. It's got to be like 2 coffee mugs of coffee.
I don't know. Is that like in the new series, or was I just missed that from the old?
I think they were introduced in Rogue One. Like I could be wrong though. I don't actually follow Star Wars very much because I'm just not entertained by it anymore.
I gave up after the first 6.
Yeah,
I was there for it. I've seen them all, but
this is actually Lauren's mug, and she loves it, and I hate it just because it's so big, and I don't know but I don't know how to hold it. But then when I finish that, I have a very healthy Diet Mountain Lightning to finish off.
Mountain Lightning?
Yeah, it's the Mountain Dew. I will never buy brand name soda ever.
Really?
Yeah, because it tastes the same. There's no way you can do a blind taste test on a Diet Mountain Lightning versus a Diet Mountain Dew and tell me that you can actually tell the difference.
Yeah. Okay. The whole blind testing, I think that's legit. I don't know. I think there's validity to it. If I think about it and it's in my head, I can think like there's a clear difference between Coke Zero and Pepsi Zero, but maybe I wouldn't actually know that.
Well, I think Pepsi and Coke is a little different. I can taste the difference between Pepsi and Coke. Coke has a little more spice to it, and Pepsi makes my teeth feel weird.
I like when people call like pop spicy. It just feels weird. Like I get what they're saying, but
it's not hot spicy. It's just like, oh, you added some spices to this.
Sizzly. Yeah.
Yeah. But Diet Mountain, I don't know what the prices are right now, but like 2 liters, for example, a 2 liter of like Mountain Dew costs like $1.30 or $1.50 or something. But then like a 2 liter of Diet Mountain Lightning costs 69 cents. So I don't care how rich I am. I will never buy name brand.
I think it's just funny.
Unless Mountain Dew comes back out with Pitch Black 2, I am 100% buying Mountain Dew. But I don't buy like the normal. I don't drink like the normal sodas unless I'm using it as a mixer in my drinks.
Makes sense.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Everbros podcast, episode 14.
14.
We've got a good one. We've got one that's kind of close to our hearts today, because we've been dealing with it for years, and it's kind of the non-traditional agency approach. But today we wanted to talk about it being okay to grow slow and not just coming out of the gate and 10xing everything and getting that $10,000 a month mark that everyone is so strongly adamant about. It took us a while to get to $10,000. I think it took us 2 years I think our third year was when we actually hit $10,000 a month in reoccurring revenue.
Yeah. And if there's any crossover between people who listen to the Tropical MBA and this, then this 1,000 days was about right. And that wouldn't surprise them at all. I mean, it was a right around there, like year 3, where we really hit the big stride. And yeah, we're in a solid spot.
Yeah, that was when we like actually replaced our day job income. At least we were making equivalent of our day job income. So if we were both working at our day jobs at the same time, we were actually doubling our income, and we were sitting pretty good. It was hell as we tried to grow, but also too, that's MRR, and half of our income, our revenue, isn't MRR. It's like onboarding costs and things like that. Actually, it pretty much is just onboarding costs as half of our entire revenue. So the MRR thing is a good thing, because then we can just rely on that to be like, okay, that's our paycheck, or that's, you know, what we have coming in to pay our bills. But Cody, you came into this a few years ago, and you said, hey, here's basically the 5-year plan. And you would think starting an agency with a like a 5-year plan, you think, oh, by the end of 5 years, we better be doing like $1 million in revenue. And it's like, no, that's not the, I guess if we both quit our jobs and then this is all we did, and we just, you know, as you put it, no lifed it for 5 years straight, you know, maybe, but that's not the reality of things. And you and I aren't gamblers. We wanted to keep our day jobs, keep our security, keep our health benefits, but also grow something on the side to then replace our day job and play it safe. Because at the end of the day, Cody and I, when we have, you know, our own responsibilities to take care of, you know, neither of us have families yet, but we still have, you know, a half of a relationship that we have to manage as well. And we can't just be bums doing this. And we don't want anybody out there to just say, I'm going to start my own thing. The best way to do this and the fastest way to do this is to quit my job, because that's awful advice.
Yeah, I think the important thing to remember is to constantly ask yourself and each other, if you have a partner, why are you doing this, and is it going in the direction that you want it to be? Because it's very easy to say yes to things and slowly slip to a place that you don't want your business to be in, or you don't want your life to be in. A big part of this most recently has been for me to be able to go back to school and study Japanese, which was one of the goals I wanted to. And this has enabled that. It would have been possible to have kept a day job, just reduced hours there and negotiated that. That was an option too, but this has been a lot more fun, a lot more rewarding and fulfilling, and just works better with the whole, I'll say, lifestyle design, because that's what it is. It's, you know, it's a buzzword, but that is the reality. So, I mean, for ourselves, and then, but also for each other. I mean, you know, Jake, I ask you this regularly when we meet up. I'm just, hey, where's your life? Where's your brain at? What are you thinking? What are your priorities? What's important to you right now? Because at the top, that's important. Making sure that you're on the same page, and that if your lifestyles and your priorities are changing, that none of that comes as a total shocker, because that can be very weird. And you can have fallouts that way. So
I think my favorite quote of all time, and I heard this quote back in 2017, maybe. It was before I had even gotten Evergrow, like, basically on its feet. I literally had a domain name, and that was it. But the quote is by Earl Nightingale, and you probably know this one. It's, don't let the fear of time. Oh, sorry. Let me back up. The quote is, don't let the fear of the time it will take to accomplish something stand in your way of doing it. The time will pass anyway. We might just as well put that passing time to the best possible use. So I kind of lived my entire life with Evergrow, and then growing slow while maintaining my day job with that idea in my mind that, hey, this 5 years, this 10 years, it's going to pass no matter what. So whether I grow it slow and safe now or take a big gamble, either way, that time is going to pass, and I'm going to be so much more grateful I stayed safe and, you know, grew it slowly but intelligently.
Yep.
But growing slow isn't a risky thing. It's actually least risky. The only thing risky about it would be that maybe you're not meeting your own internal weird goals yourself. you run a much higher risk of growing fast, both if you fail and if you succeed. Because if you fail, I mean, it's obvious, right? You sink all your money into this venture, you sink all your time, you quit your job, you devote your entire life to it, and then you realize that you're a shitty salesperson and you suck at marketing. Or you invest a bunch of your money into these online guru classes and they don't work out for you. The other option is you quit your job, you invest all your time and money into this, you are good at marketing, you are good at sales, but you suck at business.
Yep, that's real.
Then you realize that you now have heavy cash flow or heavy income, but you've gotten to a toppling point where you're going to topple over because you didn't spend any of that time developing processes and making sure that those first initial years of your business, which are the most critical for continued growth, none of that was documented or processed out, or you didn't spend time thinking about different things that could go wrong and how to prevent that. And I think that's one huge benefit of growing slow is when you grow slow, you have a lot more time to think about the processes to put in place in order to prevent things from happening that bigger companies are dealing with. And like for Cody and myself, that's documentation right now. A lot of the companies that we started with, they just hit the trigger and they just started growing and growing without any documentation in place. And then a bunch of people, once they got to that point of heavy income, their team just started leaving because what they did was they cultivated a successful high stress environment. And if you're in it for the long run, that's not the way to do this. If you're looking to make a quick buck, maybe, but then you're just going to piss off a lot of people in your life, and then your 5-year plan ends there.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. Did you want to jump into Spinutech and what Target Click?
Yeah. I'm probably stretching myself and making myself over important than I was in my role and positions in places that I used
to.
Yeah. But so in my role wasn't unimportant, but it wasn't top level. I was nowhere near the top. I was a cog in the wheel, but I was able to learn and see these things too. And the position that you're in when you do these things changes the way that you do them significantly based on various factors. So, for example, I started my first job that I got hired out of college for was at Target Click that got acquired. And so sometimes I will compare in my head us and where we're at to those positions. And I think, so the big difference being they had 3 founders that came out of an incubator. So they were younger than us at the time, but they came
not like a literal incubator, like not like a baby chick, but like
a business incubator at a college. So they had guidance and support and that sort of thing. But also
they were lab grown entrepreneurs.
Yeah. But also having 3 people, makes a lot of things a lot easier. So that's one thing. Spinutech was, I'll back up a little bit again. There was also an acquisition where the founders, 2 left very quickly. And I was late to the party. The acquisition, I believe it technically already occurred and there just wasn't a name change. They were still going through the process. But I was there when 2 of the founders left very early after my hiring. So that was weird. And people gradually left and there was the whole thing. I remember watching, I think it's the Secret Life of Walter Mitty, when it's in the early in the movie where they're in the elevator and he's like, yeah, we got acquired. And like the word had a lot of weight and I didn't know what that meant. And then I learned what that meant. It's a scary word. But So that was one environment, and certain things applied and mattered there. But then Spinutech was, it was kind of cool and unique in the way that they did it, because they were a web development company who, after more than like 10 years of building websites, got heavy into marketing. So part of my role when I came on, and the team was very small, was just to be, it was the marketing guy. And I knew enough because I had done enough, like multiple things, to just field a lot of the stuff that they threw at me. And I had the knowledge, do that. And I say that, and I point it out because of the web design part of the business, which is very stable, brought in good money, they were able to fund this branch, right? And provide the security that other people starting from zero would have a harder time to do and doing. So, for example, they could afford me, which sounds like a strange or dumb way to say it. But in contrast, you have us, who are fully, we're bootstrapped. We're not venture backed. We don't have people giving us money for the sake of growing. And when we hire people on the team, we're paying them with the money that we're making right now. And that also makes a pretty low ceiling on what we're able to pay people for the time being. So we have to incentivize with other perks. Like, we're cool to work for. That's not, I'm trying. No, we, so it's primarily kids.
I think a big perk is you don't have to work specified hours. You can work whenever you want. Mm-hmm. And that's really cool for college kids.
Yep.
But yeah, we're very laid back. It's entry level friendly. There really aren't a ton of perks, honestly, but
work where you want, when you want is pretty cool. And a lot.
Yeah. In the pool of the jobs that are available to most college students, this isn't one of them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. So that's when I think about those things and I factor all of them in and consider the positioning. I think you have to think of it. You're not in the same group and crowd as the VC backed California, Silicon Valley businesses. Don't think that way. You can't think that way. It's not right. It's not fair. And even if they're not, even if they're venture backed, or it's somebody on their second or third business, or it's somebody who's just got a lot of business experience, it's not fair. You can't compare yourself in that way to those people who might be going a little bit faster. That's one thing. Or say they are going faster, and maybe that's just not even a good thing, the way that they're doing it. Because as I grew with both of these companies, I can't even say things were particularly bad. It's just that some things changed that were less appealing to me. I would say, in fact, I only really have good things to say about how they chose to do things, and I have a lot of respect for the way that they did it, and thought it was really cool. And that's why I still ask them questions on how to do various things. But knowing how you change emotionally as the growth happens is important, so you know where employees will be coming on to and where they'll be at with their experience. Because right now we've got people who are working directly with us, and that's their experience. It's this weird, we're the owners, but we have to work closely together. So almost like an apprenticeship type of deal. But later, people will have less contact with us. And then even later on past that, which was the case for like Spinutech, you'll get to the point where you don't even talk to people anymore, because it's so big that those people that you actually work pretty close with, you got to go out of your way to check in with. And in a way, it's kind of a bummer, kind of sad. Cool. It's like, oh no, we're so successful. We are sad now because all the money we're making. But it's a real thing. And that's why I couldn't kick it at a really big place. it just wouldn't be very fun for me. And I know what my skill set is now, and that's developing systems and processes to create my own life crisis, where I'm constantly in panic because I think I'm working from behind, and we're laying down the framework and what's needed to grow quickly. And I guess that's coming up, probably one of your next points, Jake. But once it's done, it's just floor it, just pedal to the metal, and grow, because you're well equipped to do so. And then once everything is just amazing, you finally kick back, relax, and then think, do I deserve this? I'm coasting now. Everything's easy. I'm making good money. Boy, this is weird, right? Like you start to have the imposter syndrome and identity crisis. And I'm saying those things. I wasn't even, I wasn't at the top of those places, but I did contribute in a lot of ways to the growth and systems that enabled my work to be similar to those ways. So
I want to touch on something that you said, and I wrote it down because I loved it. But I don't think you are talking about from the business owner standpoint, but it's knowing how you'll change emotionally. Mm-hmm. Because if you grow way too fast, you have no idea. I mean, who you were when you started growing is going to be the same person as who you are when you're making $1 million a month. Mm-hmm. And that's not a good thing. Mm-hmm. Because as you make more money, you will change. And if you make a lot of money really fast, you'll get arrogant. You just will. And if you also don't know how to handle it, and you don't know what to do in disaster situations, and this is exactly how VC funded businesses fail, all of them. Well, I guess not all of them. I'll get to what I meant by that. But Cody, you've mentioned that I have changed significantly since we started this. Just one, how I conduct myself and how I view certain marketing and certain business practices, because everything we do now is super safe, and there's just a lot that I am willing to give up for the pursuit of creating safety nets, and then also just maximizing scalability in the future versus adding more revenue right now. Mm-hmm. And even in my personal life, a lot of my personal life finances and purchase decisions have totally changed. And it's because we spent all of this time slow growing, and I've been able to grow with the business versus the business outgrowing who I am. And that's extremely important from my perspective. So talking about the VC funded businesses out there, I do want to put a little perspective into the listener. I'm gonna brag a little bit. Okay, so I am a personal candidate. I'm a candidate for being on Forbes's 30 under 30 list for 2023.
Let's go.
And it's cool. It's a cool title. It's a cool thing to be even considered on there. Sent me a long email. I had to do a really long survey about it. But regardless, I was looking at some past the advertising, and I felt very imposter syndrome-y, because every single person on there seemed to have like some kind of VC funding. They raised $200 million in capital, all this, and they're in like the marketing sphere. And it's just weird to me, because I'm like, what do you need to raise capital for in the marketing? Like, I guess hiring maybe, but then like, even then you don't know how to hire. A lot of these people, they have a lot of money, but they have no experience of how, growing and dealing with the pitfalls of hiring the wrong people for the position like we have, and, hiring the wrong signing on the wrong clients. But as I was looking through this, I recognized something too. And when I casually drop this piece of information in front of like friends and family about being considered for the list, they're all very congratulatory, and it's a cool feeling in the short term. But at the same time, two things. One, I can only brag about it for like 5 years, and then it gets kind of old. I'm just like back in the glory days when I was in my 20s. I was on this list.
Quarterback. Yeah.
and then like, I can have a cool picture framed about it and then just like never talk about it. But the other thing too is I always say this to kind of reel people back after I mention that, because it's like, it deserves like I think it deserves like, oh, that's cool. Like really congratulations. Like you've done a lot, but like, that's it. Stop it there. Because as soon as people start thinking like, oh, this is amazing for you, and then like start to question their own life, because at the end of the day, it's just a list produced by a magazine that's just Chinese owned. It doesn't really mean anything. And
wait, is it Chinese?
Yeah, Forbes is Chinese owned
because it's Chinese owned.
Well, Forbes is like the American business magazine, you know, like Entrepreneur Inc. or whatever, and it's just owned by China.
I just like, oh, that's why it doesn't matter. That's what you're.
It makes it matter to me less.
America, let's go.
Also, have you seen some of the articles on Forbes? Like, they're just awful. Like some of the Forbes contributors are just terrible. Like, how did you get on here?
Yeah,
but
I think one of the biggest learning experiences for me, when it comes to realizing like talent and those because you're just talking about basically talent versus networks, because what is success is relative, and people in different circles have different levels of success based on their perspectives. But I remember when I went out to Google for a training, it was the first one, and we were talking with some people who were at much bigger companies in the area. I'll just say that. And I remember thinking, geez, you guys are kind of dumb. Like I expected you to be a lot smarter if you're this close to this. And there's a lot that you guys don't know. And it was cool because it made me realize too that like now I don't immediately go to, we need to be in the big metros if we want to hire good talent. I just don't think it's true. I don't think it's true because I know it's not. It doesn't have to be the case. There's more people. There's a higher quantity of people, and that part's good. But there's very bright people who just don't want to have much to do with that. And because of that, if you can find them, not saying it's easy, but it is very cool when you can.
Yeah. Well, okay. So the second part, not to totally ignore what you said, but I'm gonna
ignore it.
The second part was when I reel people back in, I always tell them that, hey, it's not that important. Just if it is, then name one person that's ever been on any Forbes 30 under 30 list. Mm-hmm. And nobody has been able to name a single person. And my theory is because it is all venture capital backed people who get a ton of money, who build a really big connection with a bunch of people who pay Forbes, and then just don't go anywhere. Their company tanks because they don't have the experience of growing slow. They tried to grow insanely fast, company tanked, and then nothing happened. Now they're in their 30s and 40s doing nothing. Well, I mean, a lot of them are still working for companies like Meta and Google and stuff, but
yeah, just the boring ones.
Yeah, the boring. I mean,
well, everybody wants to work at Netflix. Yeah.
Well, if you go by Meta's quarterly business review, they're a failing company. They're shrinking. Their first quarter with lower profits.
No, I know it's a good point. I think it's a good thing to clarify too. I'll give another shout out to the Tropical MBA just because they specifically do point that out about themselves when talking about their target audience, is that it's like bootstrapped, location independent businesses, and that's the mentality that we operate from too. It's not.
Let's define bootstrapped real quick. I don't think we've ever done that yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's hard because it's an ironic word, but I would just say you're doing it yourself without financial backing, or maybe. Yeah, I always
kind of envisioned it as like, yeah, you don't have financial backing and you don't have the individual support for specialized roles, so you take on all of the roles. Mm-hmm. That's similar like if you were to hire like an accountant and they also do like the office management, like that's bootstrapped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess I would say like even potentially just small scale investors, maybe you aren't asking for that much money. Like it's ultimately less than, it depends on the type of business that you're doing, but for the overwhelming majority, like just under 100,000 for sure, maybe under 20,000, that you're just taking out a small loan, something like that. It's not like Donald Trump, like a small
well-
$1 million.
Yeah, that is it's a bit subjective. That's kind of like, how big of a loan do you need to take out, or how much funding do you need to be until you're not bootstrapped, or until you're not, capital backed. It's kind of like my analogy. I got a quick one for you. What's the quantitative figure for determining whether something is a pond or a lake? I guess because I always start out with like a subjective definition. Like I ask people, what's the difference between a pond or a lake? And then someone says a lake is bigger. I'm like, yeah, but how much bigger?
You can take a boat with a motor on a lake, but not a pond.
Okay, so depth is your measurement.
I don't have a quantitative.
See, I want to know what the answer is. So if you're listening to this and you are like some kind of pond surveyor or some kind of water expert for some reason, please let us know.
Use this for trivia later on.
Yeah, well, I've even Googled this and I couldn't find like a straight answer.
Maybe it's up to the person who finds the lake or pond to decide what they want to call it. Like Lewis and Clark just wandered around and then they found one and they're like, nah, that's a lake to me. But that one, pond, for sure, 100%.
They did a lot of charting in Minnesota.
Yeah, they'd have to.
For those of you who aren't familiar, Minnesota is the land of 1,000 lakes.
Yeah,
but there's a lot of ponds.
Decided. They're like, it's 1,000-ish. And then we'll let the rest of the people deal with naming them.
I don't think they even came to Minnesota. I think they actually went through Missouri.
I can't remember. I think whenever I think of that, I think of Night at the Museum, where they're like, Sacagawea, Sacagawea. That part of it. Yeah.
I'm looking up their trail that they took. Yeah. They went through Missouri and then up the Missouri border, kind of between Nebraska and Iowa, and then through South Dakota. So they didn't even go through Minnesota.
Land.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I know.
Disappointing.
I know when I lived in Kansas.
Try hard. Like.
Yeah, they kind of explored the entire U.S. What idiots. Our next point, though, just to jump, because we've been on this for a while, was documentation and making sure that is fleshed out before you go and start trying to scale, because you can't scale. I mean, eventually, let's pretend that you do get to this coveted $10,000 a month on your own. Great. Now you're working in your business. You're a slave to it.
Congrats, you have a job.
Yeah. You set out to destroy, or you set out to you became the very thing you set out to destroy. And that's not, I mean, if without the documentation, you cannot get out of the business now. You now have to manage your entire workload plus documentation. So now you're going to be putting in 80 hours a week. On top of trying to hire people that don't have any direction, and you're not going to know if those people are good fits or not until 6 months to a year later, when you realize that, hey, I should have been better about hiring. But
yeah, I got strong feels about this. I think processes and procedures are unavoidable, period. Whether or not you want to deal with that personally, I guess is negotiable. But it needs to be among, here's how I see it. You can grow two ways. You can document and then you can floor it. Or not even floor it, right? Just put some gas on it. And that's a way that, it's almost somewhat my style. And if you think about it, it's kind of similar to product creation or something like that, where you have to make the thing and then you take it to market and you sell it. And if you do a service and you want to get out of doing the service yourself, well, you have to teach people or figure out a way to have other people do the service. So that is your procedures and ways of teaching people to do it. That way you can get out of the way and have them do it instead. So that's one way. The other is, I guess, well, okay, I'll say three. But the other is as you go. And it's as things come up, there's some stop and go. There's, okay, we're going to take a break. We're going to get some of this knocked out and, grow incrementally. And that's not the worst thing. I think it's pretty realistic. That's how we've done a decent amount too. You have to be willing to compromise a little bit with that, because if you, again, I think there's very smart people who would spend forever documenting and never selling and then never make any money, even though they've made a brilliant thing. And you can't, you got to make money. So if you know that you're more inclined to do that and never actually hit the market, you're just a researcher or a studier and you're listening to this podcast, stop listening. Don't listen to us ever again. Shut up, go work. Serious. Third would be, and I hate this. I hate this, but it is completely valid too. And it is to never deal with the procedures and documentation yourself. You just vaguely reference them and have other people deal with it. And okay, I'm going to rip on Spinning Tech in a very nice way, because when I say this, it's just not a good fit for me in my style, because I'm architecturally driven. How Spinning Tech grew, from my perspective, was they hired very smart people and paid them well. And I think there's somewhat golden handcuffs, right? And that's amazing. That's from an employee perspective, that's like so cool, because I'm appreciated, I'm valued, everything I do matters here. But from a operations perspective, if you have the financing to do that, super cool. That's awesome. If you don't, how are you going to keep people around? And if they do leave, how are you going to grow and transfer that knowledge? It's a very difficult place to be in. So you can do that. If you have, I think some people would say money doesn't matter. I disagree. I think money matters a lot. It's not, what's the saying? It's like oxygen, right? When you have it, you never think about it. When you don't, it's the only thing you think about. So
I've never heard that, but I like that a lot.
Mm-hmm. If you can take it off the table, then yeah, it becomes not an issue. You pay people well enough. But if you know that you're not well equipped to do that, then you need to protect your business, safeguard yourself in positioning as you grow to transfer that knowledge in case people do leave for whatever reason, whether it's financial or not, right? Final point with that is, if you say you don't have the ability to really lock in those golden handcuffs type of situations or deals, then you will grow. People will be frustrated, and there will be lots of tension internally that you're dealing with about people being unhappy. And I'm not really, I didn't even experience this at Spain Tech either. But it's very easy to see how other companies do experience that. And if you don't have great team cohesion either, then people who have beef, it's going to be a hot mess. I don't really know how to articulate this very well. Hopefully I did a decent job. Yeah, because my main points being, I want to be respectful to the way that they did things, because it's worked very well. And again, what do I know? I'm much smaller. And we're trying this a different way. That's anybody who goes out to do their own thing and do their own business. It's usually, like, for me, part of it was people saying you can't do that, and then me saying, okay, watch me, I'm going to try. And then it works, and then we're doing it. So there are different ways, and a lot of it is, if we're ripping on it, it's because it's a bad fit for us. But again, I do point out the positioning too, because if you didn't have the money to really show, well, you need to hire people who are smart enough to do jobs without processes and documentation, because they just know the knowledge. that there's a premium there, right? You're not getting entry level. You are paying for above entry level. And how are you going to do that if you are bootstrapped? And then if you're in that position, what are you going to do? You have to have documented procedures and the processes outlined in case people leave. There's I'm blanking on his name right now. He's the owner of A4D, Ads for Dough affiliate network. And I watched a video of him once and he said, what was it? We don't hire media buyers. We make media buyers. This idea being that they don't hire for the position, they hire the person, and then they go through the process. And by the time they're done, they now know what they need to do. But it's a conveyor belt, right? And it sounds somewhat impersonal, maybe, but how else do you convey that knowledge? I think it's some level of that is necessary. And for my brain, I love it. I think it's ideal.
Yeah, I think that's what I mean. It all comes down to, God, I sound like Porky Pig right there. It all comes down to what you're willing to do, and what I'm not willing to do is continue working in the business forever.
Yes.
So the only way that we're going to get out of this is if we actually have the documentation in place, which takes time, because we either have to do that or we have to train people to document. In order to train people to document, you have to train them to do the things as well. And which is what we're doing, which is going to take time before we flip a switch on and start bringing in a bunch of clients. So it's okay to grow slow, which is kind of, it's not the next one, but it's the next topic after that. But the next one that I wanted to bring up real quick was just price your services as if you were paying somebody to do them. So we've kind of touched on this in a previous episode relating to pricing, but you can't price things as if you're just doing them, as if you're making the hourly rate that you want to make. And again, refer back to our how to price your services episode, where we're not actually talking about, just doing an hourly rate thing, but like your internal hourly rate. If it's $50 an hour, I'll tell you right now, that's not enough to grow. Initially, maybe, because you still need to build your portfolio. But once you get to the point where you're setting your prices, if you set them at $50 an hour for internally, and then you start bringing somebody on board, in order to pay them a decent salary, eventually, you're going to be paying that person around $40 an hour. So now your margin is $10. Is that really what you want your margin to be? So keep in mind that when you should price your services competitively with the market. So when we did it, our market's paying anywhere from $100 to $200 an hour, and we're relatively new, and we deal with a lot of smaller companies. So we figured $125 an hour is a good hourly rate, and I'm sure that's going to go up eventually, either with inflation or with expertise and growth. But if you don't price your services that way, you're never going to grow. You're actually going to grow too slow, and you'll be stuck in the freelance hustle forever. Mm-hmm. So there is a happy medium between not doing the venture back thing or quitting your job and growing too fast, and then also making sure that you're not going to grow too slow. But with that, our final point, which was, it's okay to say that, or it's okay to admit you're still working at a full-time job while you're building your agency or coaching consulting business. So the answer becomes to quit your job or not to quit your job. Or the question becomes to quit your job or to not quit your job. And I am still working a full-time job right now. One, because I can. Cody is doing Evergrow full-time. You quit over a year ago. It's been almost a year and a half now. And part of the reason is, Cody, you're going to school full-time. I'm working full-time. But Cody and I have essentially replaced our full-time salaries from our previous job, working half as much. And if you kind of quantified it in an hourly rate, we actually make double from what we did in terms of an hourly rate. Me, yes. Cody, you maybe not so much because you had a much better job than I did at the time. But we're not in a position where I have to leave my day job. But if we do get to that position, I will. However, I will say this. I do think that it is good for our growth and our scalability that I can stay at my full-time job, because that means we are growing and documenting our processes in a meaningful way in which a lot of this work can be passed off to our employees, and we can still maintain our lives without overworking and killing ourselves.
Yep. Yeah, I think I'm a big fan that's staying at your day job, because it forces you to get your stuff straight. It's very easy to tell yourself that you're going to do these things when you're not at your day. Because I've done this now and I've experienced it. It's easy to say I'm going to do these things when I'm not working at a day job anymore. And if you just make a solid jump, I can't imagine what that would have been like, because the transition made it easier for me, but there's still a lot of strange shifts, where if you aren't disciplined, it'd be very easy to just let things go, and not know what you're doing. I think you have to be obsessive to some level, in order to keep things in order and where they need to be. But the benefit to staying at your job is it makes you respect your time, because you don't have as much of it. So you have to get things straight. You have to get them in order, and you have to think about those next steps and how you're going to handle them when you're not there anymore. So big thing being like documentation and employees, because say you jump, you have all the time in the world. What if you just become trapped inside because you weren't actually preparing to avoid that? And if I've mentioned this before in an episode further back about, I think that you have high ticket consultants, and then you have large scale businesses. And those are two different types of business models. Like high ticket consultants, that's if you want to leave your day job and make a lot of money just working for yourself and selling your services at a premium, then you can do that. That's cool too. You can even make more money doing that. I think eventually there's a cap compared to what you can do by building a large business where you're an owner and you have equity and you're selling other people's labor. But if you have to operate from that perspective, and doing this in your off time forces you to think that way instead of telling yourself that you're going to and then not doing it.
Yeah, that's really good too, because even also I was half listening, so let me know if this doesn't make any sense. But if you have this goal of separating yourself from your business or from your day job full time, you're going to go home and work that much harder. And you're going to be smart about it. But if you just make a full jump, and you're going to go into survival mode, and survival mode isn't healthy, because what I see a lot of businesses doing and new agency owners is expanding the services they offer rather than focusing in on what works and creating processes for those services. And this is something that we talked about, I think, in episode 2 or episode 3, maybe. It was which services to focus on. Because when you're in survival mode, you'll do anything to make money. If you have a full-time job, you won't do anything to make money because you're already making money. And you don't have to worry about just selling to survive.
Yeah, survivor is a good word too, because I think that's like survivorship bias. You have these people who, of course, the loud entrepreneurs that you hear talking about this, saying, I made the jump, I worked so hard, I put in months, blah, 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 then I made it. Well, yeah, you're hearing their stories because they're very loud. You're not hearing the stories of the people who it wasn't right for, it wasn't a good fit for, it doesn't work out. Or the people who just, I won't say smarter, that's mean, are a little bit more I'll say composed. I'll say that, are more composed about their approach. And that's
Also, I think
why they don't feel obligated to tell people.
I think the people who also like boast about how successful they aren't. Like, I think they're full of bullshit.
Yeah.
You always see these LinkedIn posts. Like, LinkedIn is all just a big circle jerk of people just like, stroking each other's egos and being like, I grew my business to this, like, we're so successful. I retired my wife or whatever. And, it's all just crap. So you can't compare yourself to any of those people because they're probably not as successful as they make themselves out to be. People very rarely see the success of Evergrow because I don't like really talking about it because we're not where I want to be, but we're never going to be where I want to be. Because as soon as we hit a goal, I'm like, okay, cool. Next goal.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's, I think that there's a progression that people go through. You have people who just never listen to this stuff and they're just like, I'm going to go figure it out. And then they just go start a business and it works for them. And that's really cool. That's badass. I think that there's people maybe more like me who were really interested in this stuff, were hyped, listened to a lot of it, were basically keyboard jockeys, right? Big fans, super fans, didn't actually do anything until the excitement goes away and you realize that listening to this stuff is very fun, but it doesn't actually make you money and it doesn't get you any closer to your goals. It just makes you think that you're doing things when you're just being busy and not making progress. And then you have just forever keyboard jockeys. And that's why I'll tell people, like, thanks for listening. I really appreciate that. But if it comes down to you listening to us or you building a business, then stop listening to us, go away and go build your business, because that's just the reality. Is it's not sexy. It's not the actual stuff, the real stuff, the filing biennial reports with the state, the paying lawyers for advice because you don't know what you're doing for something, sending invoices and checking the books. It's not
paying quarterly payroll taxes.
Yeah. That's not, nobody's bragging about that. Nobody's like, I want to see that post. I want to be like, all right, just pay my taxes for this quarter. Let's go. Like, nobody's sharing that. Nobody cares. That's not fun. It's, yo, here's me and my Bugatti. Check it out. Private jet. This is sweet, isn't it? Like, come on. It's, if you don't learn to love that crappy part, or if that you can't not even put up with it, you have to like it somewhat, or you have to find a way to get it done.
Dude, I like it better because, like, when I can say, yeah, we just paid quarterly payroll taxes for our employees, like, I think that's really cool to brag about to friends and family, because it's not sexy, but it's also something they don't know anything about. Mm-hmm. And so when you bring it up, you're like, oh, like, this is like a legitimate business. Yep. So when we were first able to say that and do that, and when we were health insurance shopping, that was really cool. That was like, this is better than me buying a Lamborghini, because that's not just me being successful. That's me building like an empire or a business. Mm-hmm. And I think getting into those legality details of, having to actually deal with certain taxes that people will never have to pay. Yep. Because they don't own any assets like this. Yeah. Then I think that is very cool. It's not sexy, but it's intelligent, which is, I think, the new sexy.
Yeah, there's a cool confidence, I'd agree, like, to it, that you grow into, and you realize that I don't have to know how to do all these things. I have to know how to facilitate these things and get them done. And other people don't even have the confidence for that. Like, they don't even know where to start. And getting to the place where we are, where it's, well, we don't know how to do everything, but we will figure out everything that we need to do because that's what you do. So things like that, getting to that point is a lot of fun, where you can just tell people some of these things. And I think it's especially fun when you're talking to business owners who have done more than that, because then they can tell you like, ah, yeah, I did this and I learned from that. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, we just avoided we avoided an expensive problem that we didn't even know existed. You know, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So, and I'm gonna wrap it up. I think we've been at this for a while. I think people are getting tired of hearing us. So let's wrap it up real quick. Okay, so it's okay to grow slow. One, growing too fast can cause huge issues in the future. It's a great short term. It might be a great short term. Might seem cool to be wealthy fast, but then it's not going to last forever if you don't do it right. Document everything. That's the best way to hit that 5-year mark and then go way past it. Price your services as if you were paying people to do them. If you don't price them correctly, you're going to be a freelancer forever, and you're going to have the job of working for you, which is awful. Last one is to quit your job or to not quit your job. It's okay to have a full-time gig while you're growing something. I say it's okay to have that full-time gig for as long as you want. I almost consider it a badge of honor if you're able to grow something to $1 million a year and still have a full-time job. That just means your processes kick serious ass because it's working while you're working. That is something totally different. And if it gets to that point and you can leave your day job, guess what? You can start another business and you can have another revenue stream. But you can never get to that if you don't get to the point where you actually have all your processes documented and you're able to even spend 40 hours somewhere else. So that's everything I had. Cody, do you have any final notes?
Nah, we're good.
All right, everybody, bye.
See ya.
While you're working at something totally different. And if it gets to that point